Hi everyone, welcome to another TSGP video. Today we will go through a streamlined tutorial on the basics of MotoGP22 to help you understand the foundations of being fast, to help you improve your lap times, or even to improve your enjoyment of the game. Hopefully this will help those of you who are maybe new to racing games, new to MotoGP22, or even those who are experienced at the game. I have decided to break this video down into 4 sections, looking at the fundamentals of racing: weight transfer, braking, cornering, and controller tips. This will be a very talkative video, so I will leave timestamps in the comments for each section. Before we start, it would be greatly appreciated if you would like this video and subscribe to the channel to be notified of future uploads. So, let's get straight into it. First of all, let's talk about weight transfer, so you can understand what the bike is doing while you are racing. It is key to understand the fundamentals of weight transfer, as it affects all inputs of cornering, acceleration, and braking, basically all the elements of a quick lap. This is how it works at a basic level. Under acceleration, the weight transfers backwards to the rear and onto the rear tyre, and under braking, the weight transfers forwards over the front tyre. This is why applying the throttle often results in wheelies, as the weight is transferred over the rear tyre, allowing the front of the bike to become light. This is how lowering the ride height device helps to prevent wheelies, by lowering the bike's centre of gravity to minimise the effect of weight transfer and provide more mechanical grip. Weight transfer also affects cornering, by transferring the weight to the side when leaning, which is key to remember for those sections of corners which have quick changes of direction, such as the fast chicanes of turns 7, 8 and 9 at Mandalika. It is important to try and control the rate of weight transfer, as any sudden inputs can upset the bike, resulting in a loss of control and a crash. Weight transfer can also be affected by other variables, such as the gradient of the track approaching the corner, as a steep downhill braking zone such as turn 5 at the Red Bull Ring makes it much more likely to raise the rear tyre and lose control of the bike. You can, of course, control the rate transfer by pushing the left stick forwards and backwards to affect the rider's position on the bike. This can help with braking, by pushing back on the stick to put more weight over the rear tyre to keep it in contact with the track, or pushing the stick forwards to keep the front wheel down under hard acceleration. Mastering the technique and feel of braking is key to produce competitive lap times, especially being able to trail the brakes into a corner. Let's go through the process of braking, demonstrated at turn 1 of Losail. The first stage of braking is using your brake marker as a reference point, which in this case is just before the start of the curb on the left. As you hit this point, you are then braking as hard as you can, scrubbing off all the speed to ensure you can enter the approaching corner. As you can see, once at the marker, I fully apply the front brake and make sure the rear of the bike is still in contact with the track. If the rear does go up in the air, then gently reduce the front brake. Using the rear brake also helps to transfer some of the weight away from the front, which can help to keep the bike stable under heavy braking. As you start leaning, it is important to start reducing the amount of braking input to not overload the front tyre, as this will cause you to low side by losing the front of the bike and crashing. This reduction of braking should be gradual to not upset the balance of the bike, and to also help find the limit of the tyre to carry maximum speed while still hitting the apex. This balance of braking and turning, otherwise known as trail braking, is one of the hardest techniques to master on MotoGP 2022. A good way to visualise this is by saying that the tyre only has 100% of ability at any one point. For example, when you have turned into the corner and are using 60% of the tyre's ability, you can only use the remaining 40% to trail brake. Of course, this balance between lean angle and braking input constantly changes through the stages of braking and throughout the corner. Another tip, as you may have seen in my videos, I always tap the rear brake even through a corner to slow down a little bit more, and to make small adjustments to the trajectory of the bike. Once you are able to hit the apex, you can then release the brakes and gradually start picking up the throttle to accelerate out of the corner. You should always consider the camber, the gradient and the track conditions, as this will affect how you approach the corner. Looking back at the tricky turn 5 at the Red Bull Ring, it is best to modulate the front brake gradually and to only use around 75% at the brake of maximum to keep the bike under control. In wet conditions, you need to be much gentler with your trail braking, especially when leaning the bike over, and you should focus on smoother inputs to keep the bike under control. It's also worth mentioning the EBS setting, or engine brake system setting. The higher the setting, the increased rate of deceleration of the bike while off the throttle and going down the gears, but this is traded off against increased instability under braking, as the rear of the bike will step out more. This setting is usually set to 4, which provides a good amount of engine braking, but will also make the rear of the bike unstable in heavy braking zones, especially when you are experiencing tyre wear towards the end of a race. If you find the rear of the bike too unstable, it may be worth turning this setting down to 3, but braking a little earlier to compensate for the decreased engine braking. Now let's take a look at cornering and the racing line. The ideal and optimal racing line is the line that allows you to carry the most amount of speed through the corners, providing the highest average speed around the lap to ultimately achieve the quickest lap time. It's worth noting that the racing line does change dependent on the characteristics of the bike, as the lighter and lesser powered Moto3 bikes take more sweeping lines compared to the heavier and more powerful MotoGP bikes, which take more sharper lines to pick the bike up quicker and get on the throttle. However, the basic fundamentals remain the same. You should always aim to be on the opposite side of the track when approaching a corner, to open up the angle of the track, which allows you to carry more speed through the apex of the corner whilst being close to the inside curb. The apex is often the midpoint or the tightest part of the radius of the corner, which should be your focus and reference point when looking ahead. Hitting the apex and being close to the inside curb then allows you to be able to use all of the track and corner exit and carry more speed out of the corner. Let's look at a few typical types of corners that you will find on a track. First up is a consistent radius corner. As you can see, for this type of right corner, you should approach close to the left hand side of the track to open up the corner as much as possible to maximise the amount of speed you'll be able to take through it. Then you should turn and lean in and meet the apex at the midpoint of the corner, before then starting to gradually pick the bike back up as you drift to the outside of the track whilst on the throttle. A series of these corners can be found in Sector 3 at Losail. As mentioned, the ideal line here is to hit the apex and then drift out to the outside of the track to open up the line for the following corner. The next type of corner is a hairpin. A hairpin corner is one that turns back on itself, sometimes even 180 degrees. It is often better to aim for a late apex on these types of corners to allow you to get on the throttle earlier, which will provide more momentum and speed down the following straight. This is due to turning the bike tighter, standing the bike up quicker in the corner, and then getting on the throttle earlier. It's always important to know the track layout to understand which corners you need to compromise speed on in order to create a better line for a following corner, such as onto a straight where exit speed is key. The final example is of a sequence of corners before a straight. Here, the optimal line is to sacrifice the exit of the first right hand corner by holding a tighter line, in order to open up the following left corner before the straight, allowing for better exit speed. A crucial thing to note is that in a race situation, the optimal racing line can vary whilst racing in close proximity to other bikes. This can be the case with hairpin corners, as going wide on entry for a late apex can leave a gap for a competitor to dive to the inside and overtake you. This links into racecraft, but that can be discussed in another video. Using the racing line assist can be helpful when first learning a new track to understand the sequence of corners and the racing line, but it isn't that helpful in the long run as you will start to focus on the racing line rather than what's happening ahead. One thing to note here is that the braking indicators on the racing line assist are not accurate either, as some corners trick you by making you think that you can brake much later than you actually can. However, for the most part, this assist does help newer players by showing you the recommended racing line. From racing online and watching other gameplay on YouTube, I believe that leaning is one of the elements that people struggle most with in MotoGP games. A tip for this would be to lean in earlier than what you think to allow more time for the bike to drop into the corner. The left thumbstick does provide progressive input, meaning that it isn't always fully left or right, but can also be held between the centre and the sides. Using this helps to be smoother on the bike by not leaning fully left or fully right all the time, but instead being more progressive. Also remember to take more sweeping lines through the corners so you can flow through the lap and be much smoother with your leaning inputs. In terms of controller settings, I would recommend turning vibration on to provide that extra bit of feel for the front tyre so you can start to understand when you reach the limit. I believe it is turned on by default, but if not, then I would definitely recommend using it. It will allow you to get used to the feel of braking so you can start to become more consistent, and it will also provide you with more feel for the rear tyre as it starts sliding out on corner exit. As mentioned in the descriptions of my videos, I just use an Xbox One controller and I use the default controller settings in MotoGP 2022. So this has been some of the basics of MotoGP 22. Hopefully this has been helpful to you and can help improve your lap times. If you've enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. Let me know in the comments below if you would like to see more of these types of videos or if there's anything else you would like to see on the channel. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video.